The training arena of the Corvash Imperial Academy was carved from solid obsidian, its walls bearing the names of legendary warriors etched in flowing script. Today, those walls echoed with laughter. At the center of the arena stood Cadet Ethan Park, a human exchange student, facing off against a Corvash warrior twice his size. The Corvash, a species of 8 foot tall, four-armed giants with crystalline skin that could deflect most weapons, were the galaxy's premier military force. Their academy accepted only the elite, and Ethan was losing again. Is this truly the best humanity can offer? Instructor Krelzar bellowed, his deep voice carrying across the arena. This weakling who can barely lift a training blade. Ethan picked himself up from where he'd been thrown the fifth time in as many minutes. His opponent, Cadet Vorgan, stood over him with barely concealed contempt. Perhaps humans are only good for diplomatic functions, Vorgan said, his forearms crossed. You lack the strength for real combat, human. Why did you even come here? To learn, Ethan said quietly, wiping blood from his split lip. More laughter from the assembled cadets. Humans were the newest species to join the Galactic Alliance, barely 200 years into interstellar society. They were known for their adaptability and creativity, but physically, they were considered among the weakest sapient species. No armor plating like the Thexians. No multiple limbs like the Corvash. No natural weapons like the Krell. Just soft skin, fragile bones, and a stubborn refusal to acknowledge their own limitations. Again, Krelzar commanded, and this time human tried to last more than 30 seconds. Ethan raised his practice blade, fell into stance, and was promptly hurled across the arena when Vorgan swept his legs and tossed him like a ragdoll. Pathetic, Krelzar spat. Dismissed, all of you except the human. The other cadets filed out, their contempt obvious. Ethan remained in the center of the arena, breathing hard, every muscle screaming. Krelzar approached, his massive form looming. Cadet Park, I permitted your enrollment as a favor to your human commanders, a diplomatic gesture, but you are wasting everyone's time. Sir, you are weak, slow, unable to keep pace with your fellow cadets. In 3 months, you have improved marginally, but you remain at the bottom of every combat ranking. The instructor's crystalline features were impassive. I am recommending your dismissal from the academy. You will return to human space tomorrow. Ethan felt his hands clench. 3 months. 3 months of being thrown around like a toy. 3 months of mockery, of contempt, of watching the other cadets excel while he struggled with the basics. 3 months of holding back. With respect, sir, Ethan said slowly, I'd like to request a final trial. There is no point, the gauntlet. Ethan met the instructor's eyes. The traditional challenge. If I complete it, I stay. If I fail, I leave without protest. Krelzar's expression shifted to something like surprise. The gauntlet is designed for fully trained Corvash warriors. It has a 30% injury rate and has killed 3 cadets in the last decade. You would not survive the first stage. Then I'll fail and leave, but let me try, please. The instructor studied him for a long moment. Why do you push yourself this way? Why come here at all when you clearly lack the physical capacity for our training? Ethan was quiet. Then, because I made a promise to my brother, he was a soldier back on Earth, died in a stupid accident during a training exercise. Before he died, he asked me to be strong enough for both of us. to prove that humans could stand alongside any warrior species in the galaxy. His voice hardened. I won't break that promise. Krelzar's crystals flickered, the Corvash equivalent of a thoughtful expression. Very well, the gauntlet, tomorrow at dawn. But understand, Cadet Park, if you fail, if you are injured or killed, it is on your own head. I will not mourn a fool who overestimated his capabilities. Understood, sir. News of the humans' challenge spread through the academy like wildfire. By dawn, the gauntlet course, a brutal obstacle challenge through hostile terrain, combat scenarios, and tests of endurance, was surrounded by spectators. Cadets, instructors, even some visiting military officials had come to watch the weak human fail. Betting pools had formed. The longest odds were on Ethan making it past the second stage. Ethan stood at the starting line, wearing standard Academy combat gear, light armor that did nothing to compensate for his physical disadvantages. Around him, 5 other cadets prepared to run the gauntlet, all Corvash, all far larger and stronger than him. Final chance to back out human, Vorgan said. He'd volunteered to run alongside Ethan. Save yourself the embarrassment. I'm good, thanks. The starting horn blared. The first stage was a sprint across broken terrain while avoiding automated weapons fire. The other cadets charged forward, their massive strides eating up ground. Ethan fell behind immediately, his shorter legs unable to match their pace. Weapons fire erupted. Ethan dove and rolled, barely avoiding the plasma bolts. The Corvash cadets used their natural armor to shrug off glancing hits. Ethan had to be perfect. One solid hit would take him down. He was perfect. His movements were economical, precise, each dive and roll calculated. While the Corvash relied on brute force and durability, Ethan moved like water, finding the paths of least resistance. He reached the first checkpoint 30 seconds behind the leaders. Slow but not disqualified. The second stage was climbing, a sheer cliff face with minimal handholds. The Corvash used their 4 arms to power up the rock. Ethan had 2, but he also had something they didn't, experience. He'd grown up rock climbing in Colorado, had spent his teenage years scaling peaks that would terrify most people. He knew how to read rock, how to find balance, how to trust friction and body positioning over pure strength. Ethan moved up the cliff with fluid grace, finding handholds the Corvash had dismissed, using technique where they used power. He passed 2 cadets who'd chosen poor routes, reached the top in 4th place. Vorgan stared at him. How? Technique beats strength when the playing field is even, Ethan said, breathing hard. Humans learned that a long time ago. The third stage was combat, armed opponents in a confined space. Here, surely, the human would fall. The first Corvash cadet engaged the automated combat drones with brutal efficiency, his 4 arms wielding multiple weapons. Ethan drew a single blade and dove into the fray. What happened next made the watching crowd go silent. Ethan moved like nothing they'd ever seen. His style was completely alien to Corvash combat doctrine, no grand sweeping strikes, no reliance on armor to tank hits. Instead, he was everywhere and nowhere, flowing around the drone's attacks, striking weak points with surgical precision. He wasn't trying to overpower the drones. He was dismantling them. One after another, the combat machines fell. Not through brute force, but through perfect targeting, joint actuators severed, optical sensors destroyed, balance systems disrupted. Ethan emerged from the combat stage in second place, barely winded. Impossible, someone in the crowd whispered. The fourth stage was endurance, a long distance run through hostile terrain while carrying heavy equipment. Here, finally, the human would break. His species simply didn't have the stamina, except they did. Humans were persistence hunters, evolved to run prey into exhaustion across the African savanna. They could regulate body temperature through sweating, maintain steady pace for hours, push through pain that would cripple most species. Ethan ran, and ran, and ran. The Corvash cadets, built for short bursts of overwhelming power, began to flag. Their crystalline metabolism couldn't sustain prolonged exertion. They slowed, stumbled, some collapsed. Ethan kept running. His pace never varied. Steady, relentless, like a machine that had found its rhythm and refused to break it. By the time he reached the endurance checkpoint, he was in first place. Vorgan staggered in 5 minutes later, gasping for air. "What are you?" Ethan just smiled grimly and moved to the final stage. The Gauntlet's last challenge was simple: climb a rope to the top of a tower while weights gradually increased on your harness. Pure strength test. No technique could help here. This was where the human would finally fail. Ethan gripped the rope and started climbing. The initial weight was manageable, 20 kilograms. He pulled himself up hand over hand, 40 kilograms. His muscles began to burn, but he kept climbing. 60 kilograms. The Corvash cadets were making steady progress, their forearms and superior strength carrying them upward. 80 kilograms. Ethan's arms shook. Every pull was agony, but he kept climbing. Inch by inch, 100 kilograms. The first Corvash cadet gave up, unable to continue. Then a second, 120 kilograms. Vorgan was still climbing, neck and neck with Ethan. The weights were crushing now, every movement a battle against gravity. 140 kilograms. Vorgan's grip failed. He fell to the safety net below, roaring in frustration. Only Ethan remained on the rope. 160 kilograms. His arms were screaming. His shoulders felt like they were being torn from his sockets. Blood dripped from his hands where the rope had shredded his palms. But he kept climbing. Because he'd made a promise. Because 3 months ago, when he'd arrived at this academy, he'd made a decision. He would hold back during training, appear weak, let them underestimate him. Learn everything they had to teach while they dismissed him as harmless. And when the moment came, when it mattered, he would show them what humans really were: adaptable, relentless, absolutely refusing to quit. 180 kilograms. The crowd was silent now, watching this human do what shouldn't be possible. What every mathematical model said his species couldn't do. Ethan reached the top of the tower, slapped the completion marker, and collapsed. He'd won. The medics rushed to him, treating his shredded hands, checking his vitals. Instructor Krelzar pushed through the crowd, his expression unreadable. "Cadet Park," the instructor said. "How?" Ethan looked up at him through exhaustion-glazed eyes. "I trained in Earth normal gravity. 1G. This station is 0.7G every day for 3 months. I wore weighted clothing under my uniform. 40 kilograms. Made everything harder, made me look weaker than I was." He managed a pained smile. "But it also meant that when I took the weights off for this trial, I was stronger than anyone expected. You deceived us. I adapted, that's what humans do. We can't outmuscle the Corvash, can't out-armor the Thexians, can't outclaw the Krell, but we can outthink them, outlast them, and we absolutely refuse to give up, no matter how impossible the odds. Krelzar was silent for a long moment. Then he did something that shocked everyone present. He knelt. A Corvash instructor, kneeling before a human cadet. I have been teaching at this academy for 40 years, Krelzar said. I have trained thousands of warriors, and in all that time I have never seen such dedication, such strategic thinking, such absolute refusal to accept limitation. He looked up at Ethan. You did not just pass the gauntlet, Cadet Park. You set a new academy record. No one has ever completed it carrying as much weight as you just did. Around them, the crowd erupted in shocked murmurs. I judged you weak, Krelzar continued. I was wrong. You are not weak. You are perhaps the strongest cadet I have ever taught because your strength comes not from genetic advantages or natural weapons but from will, from refusal to quit, from the ability to turn every disadvantage into an advantage. He stood and raised his voice so everyone could hear. Let it be known throughout the academy and beyond, this human has earned his place among us. Any who question his worthiness will answer to me personally. Vorgan stepped forward, all four arms extended in the Corvash gesture of deepest respect. Cadet Park, Ethan, I apologize, I called you weak, I was blind. You weren't wrong, Ethan said, struggling to his feet with the medic's help. I am weak. Compared to you, compared to most species in the academy, humans are physically inferior. But we learned a long time ago that being weak doesn't mean being helpless. It means being creative, being adaptable, being too stubborn to know when we're beaten. He looked around at the assembled cadets, at the instructors, at everyone who'd mocked him for 3 months. Humans have been the underdog for our entire existence. On our own planet, we were prey animals who somehow became apex predators. We didn't have claws, so we made weapons. We didn't have armor, so we made shields. We couldn't outrun predators, so we learned to outlast them. Every step of our evolution has been about turning weakness into strength. His voice grew stronger. So yeah, I'm weak. We're all weak by galactic standards, but we're also the species that climbed out of caves to reach the stars. That survived ice ages and plagues and wars and extinction events. That kept getting knocked down and kept getting back up every single time. He smiled, blood still dripping from his torn hands. You called me weak. You were right. But you made one mistake. You thought weak meant quitting, and humans don't quit, ever, we just find another way. The silence that followed was profound. Then slowly the crowd began to cheer. Not mockery this time, but genuine respect, admiration, recognition. Instructor Krelzar placed a massive hand on Ethan's shoulder. Welcome to the Academy, Cadet Park. Your real training begins now. Looking forward to it, sir. The story of the human cadet spread throughout the Galactic Alliance. Not just among military circles, but everywhere. The human who'd been dismissed as weak, who'd endured months of contempt and mockery, who'd hidden his true capabilities until the perfect moment to reveal them. It changed perceptions, made the other species look at humans differently. Not as weak, as strategic, as dangerous precisely because they turned every limitation into an advantage. Ethan graduated top of his class 3 years later. Went on to become one of the Alliance's most decorated special operations officers. trained countless cadets in the art of asymmetric warfare, using creativity and determination to overcome superior force. But he never forgot that day in the gauntlet. The day he'd proven that humanity's greatest strength wasn't physical power. It was the absolute refusal to accept that impossible meant anything at all. They'd called the human weak. And he'd shown them that weakness, in human hands, was just another weapon waiting to be sharpened.